Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. We just, like 2 minutes ago, finished the Qatar GP, and I woke up for the end, and that was the part that mattered. How are you, Rob?
Yeah, exactly. This felt like if this had been one of those early morning races where you've forgotten to set your alarm and accidentally slept through the first 42 laps, you wouldn't have missed anything.
There was lap one, good. First safety car restart,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Rest, bad.
We'll get there. So yeah, we've got to get through the race weekend, which included a sprint and the race. We've got the season finale preview to do for Abu
Oh, no.
Dhabi as season 24 winds to an end. But before that, we've got see what caught our eye in the world of news and social, and a little bit of video vaulting. So let's jump in, being as we've got a lot today. So last week it looked like it was pretty much nailed on. The GM and Cadillac were joining. We mentioned it, said it was gathering lots of momentum, and all the press were reporting it. 1 week later, in fact, less than 1 week later, there's like official statements coming out now, basically saying there's an agreement in principle to enter Formula One with 2026 with the Cadillac brand. So giddy up, get Valtteri in a Cadillac, and away we go.
I mean, Cadillac's doing everything they can to undo the "it's an old man" brand. I mean, they've obviously done well at Le Mans and other places with the Cadillac brand in the racing. By the way, you know the name of the group that is making, behind the bid, TWG Global? The T is for Taurus, who is the guy I told you was going to make this happen. The W is for Walter, who's the money man behind it. And the G is for, I should have figured that out before we started.
Well, being as you don't know what you're doing, let's move on to the next story. We mentioned last week the heartbreaking news that Spa was going to go into the rotation, and Brian was listing ones that he didn't want to see going into a rotation. Monza was one of those, and he's going to be a happy man because that's been extended out to 2031. So at least until 2031, Monza won't be part of the F1 merry-go-round for tracks that rotate.
Yeah. And
So
speaking
are
of
you
other
happy about
things,
that?
yeah, I'm happy. I love Monza. I would like Spa to also be in the
Yeah,
grandfather
I
one
know, but
always
we can't
around.
do anything about that. But
Well, we can. We're going to sign a petition, and that always works. Uh,
yeah.
and then this week, Senna came out on Netflix just actually like a day ago. And I was watching some people on Twitter talk about they'd been binging it and watching it or whatever, and they said it was great. I have not had a chance to start it yet. I can't wait to do so. Have you had a chance to
Yeah.
start it, Rob?
No, but I've seen like the mixed bag of reviews so far, which is great track action, cars recreated brilliantly, everything that on track is epic, everything away from the track is nah. So I'll watch it and make my own mind up. But apparently the way they've done the story or the acting or whatever it is for off-track storylines, not really so good. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll go into it open-minded and see what happens.
Yeah, speaking of going in open minded, George and all of the drivers had their Grand Prix drivers meeting. They came out of it and said that they want to see hard racing. They want to see, and you want us, the fans, to see drivers battling wheel to wheel. And they're trying to get the stewards to recognize this. If you're being overtaken on the outside, if you're on the outside, being overtaken, it's on you to yield. Right now, there is a line in the regulations, and I'm quoting George, that says the inside driver needs to leave room to the guy on the outside from the apex to the exit. That's going to be getting binned off, and I hope it's going to be from this weekend onwards. So effectively, what they're saying is the inside driver owns the corner, is the way I read this whole outcome.
But without the running it off. Like I think the key bit is if you're on the inside and you're ahead and you are making the corner,
Right, you
it's your
make the
corner.
corner. You don't have to leave
The,
space for the
you
guy.
make the
You
corner.
have to
So
make the corner.
exactly. But you have to make the corner is the important piece, so we don't get any more of this kind of like torpedoing off. Force the guy on the outside to go super wide, and you'll run a little bit wide, but you're going to come out of it in the lead because you're the one, you're in control of it. So I like that. I want to see the wheel-to-wheel racing. I don't want to see people driven off track. So happy for that. Happy-ish that Mick Schumacher is getting out of a reserve role at Mercedes, and then sad of the news of maybe who's coming in. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. I just feel like reserve driver is the graveyard stint for where F1 drivers go to die. Or unless you're a rookie that is hoping to get back in super, super quick.
I can name
Mick's
two
been hanging
recently.
around in a. Mick's been hanging around as a reserve driver
Yeah.
for a couple of years now. It's going nowhere. So he's off, and he's taken the Alpine endurance
Yep, WEC,
seat,
yep,
I
World
think.
Endurance. Yep.
And they're saying that Bottas is going to come and be the reserve driver. And as much as I love Valtteri, that just feels like when Danny Rick was the PR guy for Red Bull for a year. They're just bringing him in for his videos, and when the marketing guys will be like, "Hey, Valtteri trends really, really well on social, so let's get him to do the reserve driver." It's just like I say, I could have this completely wrong from the outside looking in, and maybe it's a great role inside the world of F1. But for me, it just I hope he can get something for 26 lined up, because the longer you sit in that reserve team
Oh, I
driver
agree.
place, you don't go anywhere.
You have a shelf life in that role. It's basically a year, right? Didn't Esteban sit in that for a year before he got back on the grid? And Alex,
Yeah, maybe.
Alex a year after he left Red Bull, and then he joined Williams. So, yeah, but when he left the starting grid. So, yeah, I agree. We'll see. We'll see what happens with a new 2 seats opening up in 26. I'm sure there's some conversation on what that'll mean.
Yeah. Yep.
We've really refreshed the rookie crop. I know there's others out there still looking for their chance, but there'll be a lot of young drivers on the grid in 25. So maybe, those 2 extra seats and how the rookies do provides a little bit of opening in 26. We'll see. But I agree with you. It often is a place where
My
people
dream,
go and
my
sit.
dream is that Cadillac decide that they want a senior driver to come in and help shape the way the car works, while buddying up with someone that the home fans can get behind. So we'll get a Valtteri and Colton Herta combo at Cadillac. So we get the young American to cheer for the home guys, being led by the elder statesman of Valtteri. That'd just make it happen now, GM. That'd be a dream ticket.
I could drive down to the Indianapolis base of TWG Global and just interview everybody in person. Hop in the
No, just make
simulator.
it these two now. Just make it these two now. Just be done. None of this silly season that goes on for 3,000 years. Just sign both of those two now. Done.
Done.
Right, next.
Done.
All right, what's going on in the world of the FIA?
What is going on in the FIA?
Which we're probably going to mention multiple times as we get through to the race later as well. It's been an FIF fest this week. So, a bit like when I guess Elon came into Twitter and fired everyone. Older MBS is doing the same thing in the FIA, it seems. We've had multiple times we've reported on here that we've seen news that various people have left their positions. And now Tim Mayer, a senior steward of 15 years, was sacked. And Jeanette Tan has also just been fired, just as she was going to take her first control of her first F2 race as race director. So it was, oh yeah, I've got the role, I'm going to be race director. No, you're not. Mayer was apparently fired by text from Ben Suleiman because apparently he took offence at the contents of an appeal filed by COTA in Austin. And literally all this is that apparently Mayer represents the 3 American races, and they didn't like the wording in one of the things about where people had come onto the track at the end at COTA, and they said that they put some wording that in American legalese would open the door to being sued for negligence. So COTA had said, hey, we'll take the rap for people on track, but can we just change the wording of the way you phrased it, please, according to the article of the rules? And apparently that caused some huge personal offence to Ben Suleiman, so he's fired Mayer.
Well, and then at the same time...
No idea why.
You already mentioned Jeanette Tan, but then apparently two members of the audit committee of the FIA got fired after they expressed concern about a $1.5 million fund set up at the suggestion of Mohammed bin Sulayem for international motoring clubs. These are the clubs who vote on the FIA president the next time around. And so 2 of the audit committee members, including the chairman, were let go for bringing up this question on potential ethics issues. Now, I've seen that reported in many places, so I'm willing to at least run with that one. There was one news article had more behind it about private jets and blah, blah, blah that I didn't see anywhere else. So we're going to pretend that was fake. But still, there is a lot going on at the FIA, and it's never really good at this point. It's never like, hey, this is a positive for everybody. But speaking of positives and things that actually did go well, and unfortunately I'm going to have to tinge this with a negative as well from today, awesome news for Abby Pulling, the Academy champion for 2024. Kudos to the Alpine Academy driver. She's awesome. She's a great driver, Abby Pulling is, and congrats on the 2024 FIA F1 Academy Championship. However, then they had some barrier problems today, the day of the race, and they had to cancel the Academy race. I believe they're going to try to run it in Abu Dhabi. I could be wrong, but they had to cancel it because of the barriers. And then every 5 minutes, they kept saying we need 5 more minutes, and they kept delaying the F2 start. 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. It was a big old mess getting that going. So Academy champion Abby Pulling, then they lost the race today, the last race today, and then the F2 kept getting delayed. It was just a little bit crazy. But one last note that I had quickly on cleaning up from last week. This is my favorite note, and I saw this twice. But Formula Data Analysis, or F Data Analysis on Twitter, had the unbelievable note. The slipstream. You remember when Pierre at Vegas went out and we said, he was cleaning the destructors, and we were so excited and then bummed. And he had the massive hole in his side pod. There was a slipstream he received on the straight, and it caused his car to self-destruct. He got a strong tow from Tsunoda. He reached 361 kilometers an hour under DRS. The engine got up to nearly 13,000 RPMs in 8th gear, but because it was being pulled forward in the tow, it got higher in the revs than it should have and expected to be, and it exploded. So basically, he got a slipstream from his buddy Yuki, and his engine blew up because it wasn't ready to go that fast. That's what I'm reading because of the gear ratios and the fixed gears for the track. Man, that sucks for Pierre. Can you imagine that? You're doing your job.
So it's still Gasly's fault then?
I guess, because what was he supposed to do? They're telling him, don't get a slipstream, it'll blow up the engine?
Lift off. I mean, in my puny little Toyota, I have a rev counter, and it's red at the top where it's not supposed to go. I'm pretty sure an F1 car's got a rev counter that shows how the engine's revving. I'm pretty sure he'd know what the limit is. So, I mean, ease off, dude. If you're revving up in the red there, ease off.
Well, what if the slipstream just pulled him forward so fast he didn't even have a chance? Because he didn't push harder on the gas. He didn't go into the...
I'm not subscribing to the world that everyone else out there seems to want to be clinging to, that Pierre Gasly still hasn't caused any damage this year because this wasn't his fault. He's driving.
The gas man could do no wrong for me in that pig of an Alpine. All right, should we open the video vault?
Yeah, let's do it.
It'll be a brief one this week. There is something, so don't fast forward. We do have something here, people. All right, video vault this week. 2 notes. 1, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri play Box of Lies on the Capital FM channel. I'm assuming that's a radio station I don't even know. But Capital FM had Lando and Oscar playing Box of Lies, where they would obviously hold something and try to fib, fake, lie, deceive the other person into either saying they were wrong or telling the truth. 5 minutes, it was okay. We've seen lots of drivers do this over the years. It's a fine game. If you really want to get some McLaren content, go for it. And then listener Laura sent me some notes this week that were hilarious, and thank you, Laura. Oscar Pupastri on TikTok. Someone's training their dog. Their dog is named Oscar Pupastri because he's a puppy, and is training him to look like George Russell and do other things and stand up and put his little arms out and all this. It's hilarious. So check out Google Oscar Pupastri on TikTok. Thank you, Laura, for that. But with that, Rob, unless you have a video, we're going to move into the
No, I don't. I just want to say that's our chances of sponsorship from Capital FM have just taken a hit, then, being as you just completely shown that you have no idea who they are. But
is it English?
Yeah, I think Capital FM is a London radio station. Yes.
Oh, I missed it.
And they were ready to sponsor us. They say they love listening, and then you've just gone in and gone, don't know who Capital FM are. And by the way, the video sucks.
Are they streaming us like Florida sports stations?
Not yet.
Well, then they can take a leap. And with that, we close the video. All right.
Okay, I'm going to take one of my rare moments where I actually seem to pick up something, because normally you're pretty good at these little Nostradamus moments where you predict something. Or is it that if you throw enough stuff against a wall, something will eventually stick? Because you make a lot of predictions as well, yeah. So I'm not sure.
If you take the entire bowl of spaghetti and throw it on the wall and one noodle sticks, you win.
Okay, so anyway, I think I got a noodle to stick because I watched practice, and my view was, well, everybody had said this was a track that was going to suck for Ferrari, so there's just no chance they're going to be anywhere near the front. And I watched practice, and I'm like, well, Ferrari are looking quicker than expected. They could be up amongst it. Followed by Sauber has pace.
Yes.
A little bit of foreshadowing for what's to come.
Good call. Anyway, that is a good call. You got some good spaghetti and it stuck to the wall. I'm very proud.
I got 2 strands of spaghetti that stuck out of that bowl that I threw. So then we got on to sprint quali. And this is just, we're just stuck in Groundhog Day because we're going to say the same thing. People dropped out as we were probably expecting. Colapinto, Zhou, Ocon, because for some reason he seems to be being given the Fred Flintstones version of the Alpine now, and all the good parts are going into the Gasman's car.
Apparently.
Yeah, Yuki probably had a little bit of a shocker. He'll be disappointed to drop out. And then the last person not making it through, you probably haven't got the drum roll sound effect there, but it's all good because we don't need a drum roll because everyone knows it's Checo.
Well, actually, I have this. I downloaded this from a year ago just for this moment.
Sergio Checo Perez!
It's so hard. It's so hard. I went on Twitter after that and then a subsequent issue with Checo and someone, a different podcast or fact-finding group or whatever, someone I follow who's got great feed, they ragged on Checo. And I went in the comments and I go, what is happening? And I made a gif of him looking lost from the driver briefing a million years ago. And then I felt bad and I went back out and I said, I feel bad. I wrote that. I shouldn't have done that. And then they, and again, I'll leave them anonymous, came back out and said, it's okay. We all feel the same way. I'm so conflicted with my love of Checo and then what is happening. And then motorsport.com had a great note right after that. Over the last 50 F1 qualifying sessions, including sprints, Checo has been out-qualified by Max 49 times. That's 2%. That is milk. That literally is a 2% like the milk you could buy in the. That is terrible. Terrible.
Oh my gosh. Okay, quickly moving on from Checo's disaster then. We lost. We say this is a surprise, maybe K-Mag being 15th because the Haas has been going pretty well recently. Stroll, Bottas. Again, that was tenths of a second this time, rather than being right at the back and never even looking like he was going to trouble. Might be disappointed not to have made it through to sprint Qualy 3.
You're just defending your spaghetti because both drivers are out in 13th and lower. But that's okay.
Yeah, but we know I've got more foreshadowing to come on that round. So, and Albon and Alonso again. The Williams just doesn't seem to be where like last year. It seemed to show some feistiness and some speed, and this year it's just been a little bit. But it hasn't been the slowest and it hasn't been the fastest.
But it's made out of Bondo and glue at this point. Like every Williams car they roll out there is the spec from last season because it's all the parts they got left.
It's probably the Mansell Williams actually just with a respray. It's just took it out of the museum and went, this is all we got, guys. Just send them these parts and see if they can stick them on.
The FW2. It's from late 80s.
And then for sprint Qualy 3, Lando nailed it with a fantastic lap. Russell in behind him, splitting the two McLarens from Piastri. Both Ferraris in behind that again. The cars that weren't going to be fast this weekend, apparently. Yep. Verstappen, surprising, down in 6th. Hamilton, Gassman, Lawson, and Hulkenberg. So that kind of took us to the end of the Friday action where we got the first of our installments from the man, the legend, Pitlane Paul.
And we will use his music to introduce him the first time, and only the first time, because we have 3 installments.
He's Mr. Pearside.
All right, so here is Paul's first installment from Lusail.
Hey no, sprint weekend, so I get to do a Friday review from at the back of the team hospitality unit. Sort of the glamour. You don't appreciate the glamour that I have to go through. So I think I was a little bit rude last review, whereas like I didn't really give Max any congratulations for winning the championship. I think I was a bit poor there. So in honour of that, well, congratulations to Max for winning the championship. I know I'm a few days on. And he joins 4 times. He joins, and look, even in terms of Red Bull racing, he now joins legends. And one that is Sebastian Vettel. And Sebastian Vettel is dearly missed in this paddock. We all like Seb. He was a good guy. And he was famous for the famous one-finger salute. So in honour of Red Bull, their champions in 4 times, this is going to be the triple finger review. So we've had dongers and wangs. Now we're going to have a little bit of fingering to close the season out. Okay, we've got Abu Dhabi to go, but it's not a triple finger, is it? So anyway, that was sprint qualifying. I think I've said this a few times. I'm not overly shocked at at anything that's gone on today, and I mean that pretty much in terms of Sergio Perez again. I mean, we say it. I think we're bored of saying it, and I hate saying it because you don't like to see a driver going through the mire. But how he has probably single-handedly cost Red Bull the constructors' position.
100%.
So that's a bit. I just feel for him a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's a high-pressure sport. As we have found out, obviously losing the seat with what we've got, I will touch more on that after the season when I come on with you guys. Well, hopefully I'm going to come on with you guys. I might be sacked also like we've been, but you never know. Apart from that, right, what else have we got? Oh, Yuki had a bit of a rant going out early, but I think all drivers do that, really, don't they? We're a little bit disappointed with Valtteri. We could have really pushed on to the top 10, but the tyres just didn't come in really. But encouraging for Sunday. And then really the top 10. Yeah, look, good job for Lando. The Constructors Championships, obviously. The annoying thing is that sort of could be wrapped up this weekend. Looking at the results that they got, so
it won't be.
That's a little bit disappointing. I think we'd like that to go down to Abu Dhabi, but who knows at the moment. It's tomorrow's a long day. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things still to go. A bit of Italian there. A bit more Italian. There's a lot still to cover, I guess. So let's see what tomorrow brings. But what I will say, sorry, I appreciate now I'm nearly going on 3 minutes. I'm not going to waffle again. If I was to say it's remarkably cold here in Qatar, you're probably going to look at me as if I'm stupid, based even on last year, where it was literally the hottest race of the year. But it's a really weird thing here at the moment. Like, it is actually quite cold. You literally need to walk around with a fleece jacket on. It's a really bizarre temperature. So even though it sort of reads that it's, say, 20 degrees, it's actually not. It's really weird. Anyway, more on that, more on the hypothermia in the next couple of days. For now, let's end the first finger in of this weekend and move on till tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.
I don't think I saw that coming from Paul.
Always want to pull out the surprises, Mr. Harris. So appreciate day one, Paul. And then the sprint came around, and do you know what? We've had listeners out there do us some great little musical pieces, whether it's the Pitlane Paul music, the King of the Pits, Andy, thanks for all of those. We've had Statsman music and everything. I think I need to put out an appeal for somebody to create me a Rob's Rant music, because I can feel one coming as we go towards what was just another example of why they need to rethink the whole sprint format, or just, if they're going to rotate tracks, just start coming up with different tracks where it works, because Qatar was a big fat example of Exhibit A, Your Honor, a sprint that does not work.
I mean, they might as well put the sprint at Imola or at Mexico or at Monaco. Monaco would be a great place for a sprint. Nothing's going to happen.
So, I mean, the problem with this, and I know we should go through it almost chronologically, but it was only a sprint, so we'll do a sprint format review as well. We had some great action in the first 4 laps while everyone's jockeying for position.
Yes.
4 laps, and then we had precisely nothing.
Until the very finish
struggled.
line.
Yes, me and you struggled to write notes, because it was just, I think at one point, even the entire top 10 was almost in one DRS chain. I swear they were just rubber banding the cars. Most of the drivers had left. They were back in hospitality drinking beers. And they were just being towed round by the lead car because nothing was happening. And me and you were trading notes. I think you kind of put, I woke up early for this.
I did too.
There was Charles overtook Lewis at 5 for 5th position towards the end, and I wasn't joking. I'm over embellishing where I said Crofter's excited voice woke me up. I was on my phone. I was doing other things. I was looking at the team news for the Premier League stuff that was going on. I wasn't even focused on it, and all of a sudden Crofty got all excited because there was an overtake. Something's happened, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll let Rob continue his rant in a second. Let me just say this. So we obviously saw Oscar take George for second from the start, and then Lando kept giving Oscar DRS. I'm just going to summarize it real fast. Here we go. Lando kept giving Oscar DRS to keep him out of George's claws. Lewis took Charles for 5th, and then Checo, they show the replay of him starting in the pit lane with Franco Colapinto behind him, and the light goes green, and Checo is still reading the book that on F1 for Dummies, and Colapinto starts to pass him, and they both take off, and then Colapinto just hits the gas, and Checo's still not on the gas, and he passes him in the pit lane. We had two, and if I'm being honest, two highlights of the weekend came in the pit lane racing. That was one of them. And at this point, I thought Checo was going to get removed from his seat instantly, like box to retire your career.
I saw an amazing tweet online, which was, when you're sat in the queue at traffic lights and they go green and the guy in front is obviously retuning his radio to a different station. That's what Colapinto just witnessed and decided, not on my watch, and just went past him.
What
Best thing was,
happened?
Checo tried to defend it and say, well, we weren't racing for anything, so I was just doing a practice start, and I'm gonna do a test session. It was better for me if I left a gap to the car in front. Okay, do you know what? That's got some credibility. Until the moment they interview Christian Horner, who is completely taken aback as, what the heck did we just watch? I thought when the light went green, you race. So unless Checo's engineer had told him something that he hadn't told Christian, I'm sorry, Checo, you quickly made up a story to try and get out of that embarrassment. But yeah, and then, go on.
That was it. That was it. There was
a
little bit of movement.
So then we had George being an absolute baby and whinging about
Everything.
McLaren using the DRS to keep Oscar out of his grasp. Just grow up. That's racing. Everybody lauded it when Sainz did it and kept Lando in behind him to keep Lando ahead. It's Carl Lando doing great teamwork with DRS. Well, this was the same thing. Actual teammates. So nothing wrong with what Lando did to keep Oscar in his DRS to keep him ahead of George. So George, stop crying. Get on with it. Spent less time crying, you might be spending more time overtaking. But then there's the bit that just...
You hated the end.
I die inside when I see this. And this isn't a Lando thing. It's not a McLaren thing. It's ever since I've watched this sport, giving up a win for somebody else, for whatever reason, swapping positions for wins is just so undermining of everything that racing should be. Like, I know it was a wash in the points. McLaren I won 2. That's fine. But, it's payback for Brazil. Well, Brazil should never have happened. So don't do payback here either. It's just if Lando hadn't been and everyone's saying, it shows what an amazing teammate he is. No, Lando had already shown what an amazing teammate he was because he was literally slowing down to keep Piastri in his DRS.
True.
If Lando wasn't a good teammate, he probably would have won that sprint by 20 seconds because he was in clean air. We know how that McLaren likes clean air. He would have been gone. George would have gobbled up Lando and they wouldn't have got Oscar, and they wouldn't have got a 1-2. So Lando had already cashed in his I'm an amazing teammate chips. They were there. He did a great job. Why hand the win over? And Oscar, when they were interviewed him for the win, is kind of looking really, really awkward. Like, didn't really win it, did I? I was giving it. And it's like, no one likes it. Just don't do it. Just don't do it ever again. I hate it.
Are you okay over there?
No! I hated the sprint. And just when I thought they couldn't make it any worse, we end with it like that, which is just...
So, I have to assume that somewhere in the back of Lando's mind, as he's managing to stay within a second of Oscar, was this.
Just remember, every single Sunday morning meeting we have.
Followed by something like this.
Spirals.
And so at this point, he's like, if it doesn't matter anymore, I'll just give him this little win. And then I never want to hear about this ever, ever, never, ever, never, ever, never again.
And the funniest thing is, Lando doesn't care because even the drivers don't recognize sprint wins as meaning anything. He might as well do it in a sprint race and give up a sprint finish because they don't care about it. You can see. That's why we don't get a podium for it or any celebration because literally no one cares. I would rather have watched an FP3 session and be trying to look at who's got pace, who hasn't got pace, what the tyre strategy is going to be, how's Qualy going to unfold. I would rather watch an FP3 session than a sprint race like that. I know I might be an outsider there.
Yep.
But I just don't enjoy sprint weekends where for whatever reason, whatever doesn't make us a track right for sprints.
Yeah,
they've got to start working on that because we have had some great sprints. We get ones like
this. Well, this track didn't work most of the weekend, and we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. And everyone's trying to say how great it was because I think all the Qatari, royalty and military forces were standing right behind them as they were interviewed. I guess. Rob's, you done with your rant, brother?
I'm done with my rant. I just, I need music now. It was
you do. You do need
I was so angry. I need a Rob rant. It probably needs to be really heavy metal.
I was going to say, is there the sound of an exploding bomb somewhere in there? Like, so then we moved to Qualy later that day. And in Q1, we lost Ocon, Colapinto, Hulkenberg. Again, a bit of surprise with that Haas. Liam, the RBs looked bad a lot this weekend.
Yeah.
And then Albon, and you already said it, the Williams they are not going forward at this point of the season. And so no real surprises in Q1 for the main race, Qualy. And then Q2, we lost Stroll, Tsunoda, Bottas, Joe, and the Gas Man at 11th. So we'll come back to Gasman, but again, these are all teammates, right? We've basically listed everybody off except Alonso and K-Mag. Otherwise, it's all, the usual sets and pairs. And then for Q3, we had Max take home the pole.
Where did that lap come from?
I don't know. He's good.
in sprint
F
quali,
E, Verstappen. He's a Terminator.
But in sprint quali, he didn't seem to be able to pull that lap out of the bag at all. It was amazing. I did not have Max on my bingo card for pole after seeing sprint quali.
They adjust, right? They open Park Ferme after the sprint before quali, right? So I'm pretty sure they got a chance to make some changes that they wanted.
True.
You can't fault. I really like college basketball, and in college basketball, the best coaches make adjustments for the second half. Your team may be losing in the first half or something's going wrong. You come out in the second half and you've adjusted for it. The worst coaches just keep doing the same thing that's not working. You lose. Red Bull seems to make those adjustments in the weekend. They maximize what they have with the car, and it's like whatever it is, brake bias, or if it's just the balance of the car, or the cut more wing, or whatever they can adjust. They always seem to make those adjustments. I'm not going to say they're the best car every weekend, but they seem to get the most out of it. And so I wasn't super surprised to see Verstappen up top, followed by George, then Lando, Oscar, Charles, and Lewis. We'll get into Max again in a second because he got a penalty. I just want to highlight something. So we're not making fun of Checo at this point. We haven't talked about the fact he was ninth because he made Q3. However, it would be, I'm a stat guy. I'd be missing the point if I didn't highlight the fact that
Sergio Checo Perez!
You're milking this one, aren't you?
Was a full second behind Max. A second, not a tenth, not 2/10, 3/10. We've had people on here who say the difference between drivers 3/10, maybe 4, not 5/10, not 6/10, not 7/10, not 8/10. Yes, it's 9.5/10. I'm rounding that to a second. Dude.
And then just as I think the FIA were looking at Ferrari the other year and saying, hey, do you know what? It seems to be cool to be in charge of the clown show and have everybody laughing at you. So let's do some stuff this weekend. I don't know whether it's
this weekend.
Oh my god, they did some stuff, especially when we get to the race. But here, there was a little bit of foreshadowing here of what was going to happen on race day, because I don't know whether this is the new race director wanting to sort of stamp his feet and kind of say my way or the highway. But apparently during sprint quali, I want to say, there'd been some resharpening people's focus to say, hey, in my race director notes, I said that if you slow down too much on your cooldown lap, you're going to get a penalty. So just everyone be okay with that for quali. But it's more about impeding when you're slowing down, and also the delta times between the safety car lines. So Max got a penalty for impeding George when he was on his
George
cooldown
saw
lap.
him and was also on a cooldown.
Well, so which should be 3-place penalty for the impeding. But then they decided to go, oh, yeah, I know we want to be harsh and put our foot down, but George wasn't on a flying lap, and he could see him, so he had a chance to move. So probably we should just give him a reprimand. It's like, yeah, but we really want to put our foot down and make a show of our strength this weekend. So what should we do? And they just went to the magic 8 ball, and it just said, yeah, 1-place penalty. And it's like, if George had been on his flying lap and Max had got in his way,
right,
nailed on penalty all the time, right? But then I think it's the 3-place penalty.
Correct.
There were a lot of people online. I should have taken note of it, but it's going back many. It's only like a couple of occurrences in the last decade where this 1-place penalty has ever been handed out. It just feels a little bit of a, I don't know, made up penalty.
A little bit. I was expecting them when I read that. I'm like, what? I've never heard of the 1-place grid penalty. I was waiting for them to say, you know what, we changed our mind. He just has to start from the back part of his start box. That's never, we're making it up on the fly. This is the second race for Rui Marquez, or if I'm getting the names wrong at this point. But last time we let Carlos cut across the pit entry, because it wasn't highlighted in the race director's notes. And this time we're giving out one-place penalties. The highlight for me, though, before we hear from Paul for Qualy and the sprint, was Max's pole time was 3.258 seconds faster than his pole time last year.
No, that can't be true, because remember, all the conspiracy theorists, Red Bull were caught cheating and they're much slower than last year, and it's not that everyone else caught them and there's been convergence in the rule set. Those cheats got caught and their car's slower. So this has got to be, this is a misprint. This is a typo, Brian.
Well, I love the fact that I thought the RB19 was amazing. At the time, at the beginning of this year, I'm like, why would you change it? That's why. That is the reason why.
You have to. If you have to keep going forward, otherwise you're going to be going backwards. And like we've said many times over this, they just hit their ceiling almost of performance so much with that car last year that they've been engineering into nothingness to try and get a return on speed, while everyone else has just been catching up. And it's why we think next year is going to be such an actual rip roar of a season. Just quickly before we play Paul, I found it. Friend of the show, Dre Harrison, who came on. I found the chain. He said it's the first one in 8 years. Hulkenberg got one in Germany in 2016 because he used the wrong set of tyres in Qualy. There you go. That was the last time we had the one-place penalty.
So
apparently.
wait, Hulk has... Oh, darn it, Max ruined it because now he has it. But Hulk also has the last DQ for the time in Brazil when no one looked at him getting some help from the marshals. Let's hear from Paul.
Hey no, same place as yesterday, round by the toilets, round the back of hospitality, and almost the perfect place to introduce the second finger. Let's start with this morning's sprint race. Was it any good? I don't know. I don't know. I think it might set a terrible tone for how it's actually going to go tomorrow. Sorry, in terms of could all be a little bit of a. I don't know. The F2 sprint race was a bit of a DRS train. It sort of livened it towards the end. I mean, it was okay. I'm just going to start with George Russell. I mean, I don't get his problem. I'm sorry, guys. I don't get his problem. You sat there moaning at McLaren and say it's not racing. At the end of the day, McLaren are going for a Constructors Championship. So, therefore, doing what they did in terms of Lando dropping back to give Oscar the DRS to protect him from the cars behind is absolutely... I mean, look, I understand why people might think it's not good, but I don't really understand what people expect, and especially someone like George who should know better. I just sometimes think drivers don't really engage the brain when they talk. We know they don't engage the brain when they talk, but it's just actually really annoyed me. It's just a stupid attitude from a guy you would think would be better. But I mean, okay, there we go, whatever. You know, it's bigger pressing things in the world, I guess. Apart from that, what else really happened in there? Oh, not a lot, really, did it? It was a bit... I mean, it started with Sergio. I guess I totally forgot what a pit lane start was. I mean, he redeemed himself later on to a degree, and we'll get there later. Well, I think he redeemed himself. Maybe he didn't. Maybe, I don't know. I'm skipping ahead. Apart from that, look, it was okay, and then Lando moving over for Oscar... Yeah, okay, that was nice. I think that was nice.
No.
Do we like seeing that? Oh, jeez. Oscar did it to Lando in Brazil. So, yeah, I guess it's nice. And it's great teamwork. It's great team play. And at the end of the day, that's what you need to win championships. And, I'm going to dwell no more on this one. It's what it is. Right, into qualifying. It's just happened. Look, from our side, actually bitterly disappointed. I thought it was a great chance for State to potentially get into Quali 3, but it just wasn't to be. I would say no massive shocks. I think I would call Hulkenberg a shock. I think he, considering his performance of yesterday and I guess today, I think he's going to be really disappointed with that one. Trying to think what the hell actually happened. I was sort of flicking between the football, which was the soccer, which is a bit crazy, and then the qualifying. So yeah, then we got through. Joe had a great lap. I don't know. It's really easy to feel a little bit disappointed, I guess. Lewis, lucky. I don't know. That Mercedes is a weird car at the moment. I think there's something really bizarre with that car. I'm not going to say they're doing anything to make Lewis or George belling each other. I'll never believe. I don't think that ever happens, if I'm being honest. I think that's just a myth that people like to come out with. But is it Lewis or is it the car? I don't know. Is this like heart and head gone? I don't know. I don't think so. But I mean, there's something strange there. But apart from that, I was actually really shocked. We just sat in the room, we're watching the end of qualifying, watching the interviews. Actually really shocked that that's Max's first pole position since Austria. I found that a staggering
well, it wasn't.
Stat. That's what I call it, a stat. So, look, am I excited for the race tomorrow? No. I genuinely think it's going to be a really boring race. And it's going to be a race that, if nothing's really happened on lap 1 or 2, they're going to follow each other around in a large DRS train for the remainder of the laps, because that's the only time you're going to overtake us on a start-finish straight. And if you're in a big DRS train, then you're not overtaking. And it depends what the car in front, the very front car, can he defend, can he not defend? I hope to be wrong. My gut feeling is tomorrow is going to suck. So the third finger in sucking, I'm going to leave it right there, and I will bid you good night, and I will speak to you tomorrow night for the final fingering.
Well, he's he was almost absolutely nailing it until we'll get there later in the race. If it hadn't been for that late safety car, I think he'd absolutely call it. Although the only thing I pick him up on is we didn't even get to worry about calling it a DRS train because nobody was within DRS for most of the race.
Actually, you often kind of recap like you're before the race, like you're running home on the highway or you got soccer. I want to highlight one thing that I did that I think caused this. I think it's my fault.
Oh, okay.
So we had Thanksgiving, and for everybody here in the States or anyone around the world who celebrates Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. We had all my family in town, and they were staying, many of them were staying with us. We had a beautiful Thanksgiving, and this Sunday morning, because the race was 10, they'd all left. And so I actually had the house literally to myself. My older daughter was still sleeping. And so I went downstairs at about 9:30, and I decided to have an unmolested attempt at the food. Meaning, if I've gone for any leftovers, the 7 people would hover around me and grab some too, and I couldn't do exactly what I wanted to do. So I got turkey, I got mashed potatoes, and I got gravy. And my mom had been here. My mom didn't feel well. She had to go home early, and she is obviously the reason we're cited as America's leading Formula One podcast. And she made the mashed potatoes, and they were spot on fantastic. And I bought the turkey because I'm a sucker, but I bought it from this great barbecue point. Point is, I had turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, all by myself, cornbread. Just enjoyed it. 10 minutes of peace right before the race. Now, we all know what happens when you eat too much turkey. It puts you to sleep. Tryptophan. What happened is it got into my system and it got into the race. And that tryptophan put us all to sleep because of that. So I apologize. And Mom, thank you for that. And I had a bar as well, these vanilla blondie things, which are really great. I had some of those. Anyway, and then the race started. And the beginning was okay. The first lap is interesting.
Yeah, it was just a bigger version of the sprint, if we think about it, really. We had some action over the first couple of laps, and then really we can probably jump to lap 42. I mean, we won't. We'll kind of try to pick out what happened. But yeah, Max just got a better start than George, nailed it. Lando came around the outside thinking he might jump into the lead,
yes.
And he almost got it. Almost got Max, but good driving for Max to stay ahead.
And Lando.
So
Lando thought he could pull a Leclerc. Like, oh, you guys in a battle?
Yeah.
Pop in the inside.
100%. But then Lando at least made it stick to take George. So George dropped 2 down to 3rd. And off we went. And it's like, right, now Lando's going to chase down Max. No, you won't, because we all saw the plume of dust in the background where you're kind of watching the TV, like you always say, right? The camera's tracking the lead drivers. You see some dust in the background. You're like, that's probably not going to be good. And instantly we see Colapinto and Ocon facing the wrong way, and Hulkenberg driving around on 3 wheels. And you're like, I'm not an expert, but something's just gone down here.
And the driver tracker showed Cola just sitting there not moving at turn 1. And I got a lot of texts from a friend of mine, Paul, and he calls him Crash a Pinto at this point because there have been so many of them. And he said, oh, Crash a Pinto again. But then we saw the replay. He literally did nothing. There were 2 crashes. I can find fault for 4 of the 5 people involved. A little bit. Some more than others. We'll get into that in a second. I have 0 for Franco. He was just out there literally doing his own thing. He's going
There was
around the
a whole-
outside, and then all of a sudden, Ocon just runs right into him because Hulkenberg ran into him. And so,
Yeah.
literally, he would have had to be a mind reader to have avoided that situation. He didn't close in on Ocon at all. Franco did nothing wrong, in my opinion.
It was all on Hulkenberg, wasn't it? He just lost the rear end and
Yeah.
went sideways and just took 2 drivers with him.
Ocon, I could give a little bit of grief to Ocon for putting his nose in there. It was pretty small to start with. Like, if he'd backed off a 4/10,
If you don't go for a gap anymore, then you're not a racer. So I mean, he was in there. If Colapinto can't be a mind reader that those 2 cars are going to come and collect him, Ocon can't be a mind reader that Haas is going to lose the rear end. So,
I guess so, but I also think Esteban was sitting in the car doing this again.
You can say to Haas that I'm going to go for it, so better be ready.
Because it was Haas again. He's like, I'm going in there, Haas. And then they show the other replay, because we didn't know this other one at first, that we see Albon spinning around. But I'm like, wait, is that Colapinto? No, that's Albon. He's in the air and spinning. I'm like, when did that happen? And Stroll pulled a Stroll. This is where I would put, you're not going to give it all to Stroll. I'm giving 95 to Stroll, 5 to Albon.
When they showed the onboard, even Jensen Button said it. Like everyone, because first all we heard was Albon and his reaction, saying, "Oh, it's Stroll again," and doing, just basically laying into him, saying, "Doing what Stroll does," or whatever the radio message was. And then they showed the onboard, and Stroll kind of drifts a little bit, maybe a little bit of understeer, but not any big stupid move. Just drifts a little bit on understeer, and Albon just seems to move into him rather than move the opposite way to pull out. And
Albon stayed on his line. Stroll lost control, waggled, and went into him. No.
I'm taking Button's word on this because he's driven a car before.
But Stroll got the penalty. Or are you just going to call it the FIA clown show at this point?
Yeah, 100%. I didn't think there was anything. That was a racing incident. If there's a first lap incident, then Stroll just drifted a little bit.
See, I heard this music when I thought of Stroll. But you apparently thought it was the incident sound, which is this one here. Oh, hold on. This one here?
Just an incident.
Yeah, exactly. So then we had the safety car ending. Max went super early on this one. Piastri caught Charles snoozing and got him in the restart. Then we suddenly saw Bottas disappear down the leaderboard alongside Lawson. Because,
just a couple spots, but yes, he dropped down. And Lawson went all the way to the back.
And then Stroll came in to retire. This is what I don't get for this one. They didn't want to have the penalty carryover, which I get, but I didn't understand why you come in, not touch the car for 10 seconds, and then just push it backwards into the garage. Do you have to go back out on track again?
Yeah, you got to go back on the track.
Okay. Which is pointless because he just comes straight back down and retires it. So it's a bit of a stupidity. But then we were just getting one of my favourite films. Complete unplug your brain and just watch goofiness, Dumb and Dumber. But at the end, where they got all the not
so
at the end.
Telling me there's a chance.
When they find the money and he's giving out the tips on the steps, there you go. That was the FIA, or that was the stewards giving out penalties and investigations, and we were only 10 laps in. I mean, it was just popping up all the time. Everyone's under investigation for being in Qatar. It's just...
It was actually, I think it's like like a Salt Bay, as he's dropping all the salt on his forearm into the food. Just penalty. And
because we had... Go on,
I was going to say, Rob and I were trading a lot of notes at this point, and Liam gets 10 seconds for the Valtteri. We hear Lewis jump the start, potentially. We were waiting to see other people's...
Yeah, he did.
Oh, yeah, he did, 100%. He even apologized afterwards. Sorry, guys. Lewis, by the way, we'll get on to him again later. He's one of my favorite drivers, and he did something for the second time that really makes my skin crawl. And so as we watched this, all these penalties coming through, I had an analogy that I'm not going to use here, but basically it's like, this is Formula One racing, and there's something to be interested in, but it isn't the product on track. It is the penalties. It is I'm not an eloquent man, but when I tried to say this before for Brazil, when it's raining that hard and you can't race the cars because they keep stopping it and you don't have good tires, it becomes a bit of a spectacle. And I would like to see them have the equipment to race hard in the rain. Always. Max is clearly, he was great. Don't get me wrong. This was that. The spectacle was the penalties and the investigations. Yeah. It wasn't the product on track. And therefore, I felt the same way. Yeah. I'm interested, but not because of good racing.
We're like 15 laps in or whatever, and I said, I hate to say this, but the penalties are the most interesting thing at the moment, and you agreed with your fantastic analogy that we won't air. I said that other than Lewis chasing Perez, nothing is happening in the top 10. Nothing. And then, okay, Gasman got Yuki, Zhou got Yuki. Okay, great.
The RB was bad.
Fast forward another 10 laps, almost to lap 20. Bottas swept past Yuki at turn 1. Okay. Then we had in capital letters, something please happen. Because thankfully, I was dual screening at this point. I'd got the F1 on one TV and I'd got Liverpool against Man City on the other TV, and I was just watching that instead and just waiting to see if anything might happen. It was just kind of like, give me anything. It's like, oh, they're coming into the pit stop window. I was like, oh, thankfully, we maybe watched something happen. First one in, George comes in first
7
and
seconds.
gets an awful stop. 7 seconds.
The right rear will not come off. They're like yanking.
And everyone's saying, why is he even coming in? They're still getting faster on these medium tyres.
Right.
You've come in from like high up position. You're now going to give data to every other team as to how the hard tyre warms up. I don't know why Mercedes pulled the trigger so quickly on George. It just seemed to just be, okay, they can't realise they're going to do a 7-second stop. I get that. But maybe the mechanics were asleep as well because they'd not had anything. They'd fell asleep during the beginning of the race. But
we had a mix of three things. We had a very low grip, cold track. We had a situation where they brought the hardest tires in the Pirelli range, and I like saying that because it's Crofty's thing. We've got the softest tires in the Pirelli range, but this time the hardest. So this, again, I'm a tire guy, but I'm eventually coming around to changing the way they do this. So the soft tire was last week's hard tire. Go figure that out. And so, as we're sitting there watching the hardest tires roll around this track, there's no dag. To your point, there's no dag. So there's really no undercut. Like, what are we waiting for to make this happen? And they shortened the DRS zone by 5,432 meters. And so
I don't like, I have a Rob's rant about DRS all the time when it gives me a gimme pass. But I say, if you can just measure it and get it perfect,
right.
so it drops
Land
you into
in the braking zone. Let's see what
Love
happens.
it.
You've said it a million times. I've heard it. I made a T-shirt out of it.
Oh, perfect. Why shorten it? This was never the best one for the overtake anyway. So
right.
This DRS isn't that effective. Let's shorten it. That's a good idea. Oh, really? So we had some other kind of bits and bobs going on with pits, and then all of a sudden, it was kind of like the MacGuffin in a Hollywood film. There was a lone wing mirror on the
lap 30.
It's like, how did it get there? This is some kind of Donnie Darko stuff where it just fell from the sky. But no, then we saw a replay and it had fallen off a car, which everyone said was a Haas, but actually I think it was Ocon's in the end. Albon's in the end that the mirror had come off. But anyway, who cares? So it's there. So obviously we're going to have double wave yellows or we're going to have something. We kind of got this, well, at least the ESPN coverage couldn't make its mind up because we kept getting this yellow flag, sector 1, green flag, yellow flag. And it kept like flip-flopping up at the top. Yellow flag, right. Sector 1, double yellows, green, yellow, green, double. No one knew what was going on. And we've written in the notes, well, there's got to be a safety car or a VSC because someone's got to run out and get that mirror. You can't have it in the area where people are going to be overtaking. FIA were like, what's the worst that can happen? It's not like someone's going to like drive over it and smash glass everywhere. To stage right Valtteri Bottas.
Well, but here's the problem. You have a track that has a lot of higher speed corners, which don't give a lot of overtaking. You then have one big straight, and when people start lapping people by lap 32, Valtteri had blue flags. So he had to pull over. Where would you like him to have gone is what I'm thinking. Like, did the FIA think no one will run this over for the rest of the race? Are you kidding me?
And like they were saying
laps,
on the
yeah, go ahead.
No, like they were saying in the commentary, even if that is your thought process, no one's going to run over it. What that now means is you're going to have double waved yellows on the only overtaking opportunity on the track from now until the end of the race. So even if you don't think it's a safety issue, you've just neutralized the race by doing that. Yep. And then we also got, while the flags were going on, we got Max with his Colombo jacket on, saying, "I think Lando might not have lifted during those yellow flags. By the way, you might want to investigate him for that, which is obviously going to come back and bite Lando in a few minutes' time." But anyway, when Valtteri did pull over and sent that glass everywhere, you're like, "Well, that doesn't look good." Glass on a circuit, it was everywhere, and we're literally within nanoseconds. We've got
punctures
Checo just going. Oh no, it wasn't the Checo. We've got punctures everywhere.
Carlos and Lewis got punctures.
Yes, that's right. So we had Carlos and Lewis. We had George came out on hards and was straight on the radio and effing this and effing that. Why am I on these tyres? I'll let you do your second favourite part about pit lane racing.
Well, I mean, it was. And so we end up getting, we get a safety car. Eventually here we get a safety car when it's too late. We waited way too long, like 4 or 5 laps with it sitting there, and then a bunch of laps with glass all over the track. Just get a safety car out there in front of people. That's when everything happened. A lot of the leaders had not pitted yet. So we finally get the safety car. The leaders get a cheaper pit stop than anybody else. Just they timed it well. As you already said, George went onto the hards. And again, he's like, well, what is this? And then, the second best part of the weekend, not just Checo getting overtaken by Colapinto from the pit lane start, but then Fernando and K-Mag decided to race in the pit lane. Now, this is awesome because K-Mag's coming down the pit lane already, and he's in the fast lane, and Fernando comes out of his box, and they're both hitting the pit lane limiter at 80 kilometers an hour. You can see them perfectly wheel to wheel. Right next to each other, Fernando's not backing off. And Magnussen's like, well, I'm not backing off. I'm in the fast lane. And then they get to the end of the pit lane limiter. They both flick it off as fast as they can. They take off, and Fernando gets less wheel spin than K-Mag and takes them on the inside as they rejoin the track. And I'm thinking, that's best racing I've seen all day.
And then just as the safety car's ending and just as we're about to go racing again, Brian caught it nice and early and put it in the notes. Is Checo falling down the order? And I went up to look at the little leaderboardy type thing, and you can watch him dropping like a stone. We've got the main picture showing safety car is ended and Max is leading them and getting ready to take them away again. I'm like, Perez is out. I mean, this is blatantly going to be another safety car or a VSC, depending on where he leaves it. But it didn't matter where Checo left it because Hulkenberg decided that he would definitely make sure of a full safety car. And we literally went green for about 35 seconds.
And then back to safety car again. We went VSC and then safety car, as you say. And when they showed Checo's, he said, I have no drive. And I figured his engine died. But then they showed it again, and he spun around. And I'm thinking, as Jensen said, like, well, something happened, right? Like, you remember Charles went spearing off in Brazil a year ago on the formation lap?
The rear locked or something, yeah.
Something happened here to the car. And I'm thinking, oh, that sucks for Checo. And then they show Hulk do the exact same thing. And I'm thinking, both of them didn't have their tires warmed up. This is on them, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Driver error is the way I thought it ended up happening. And then Checo had to retire because I think with his driver error may have caused the car to break. We'll find out later. We're obviously recording right after the race. But Hulk was out. It was just chaos. So then by lap 42, the safety car is ending. And then Hamilton drops down to 14th. And he was in 12th. Where am I racing? I'm in 12th. He goes, oh, it sucks, man. And then I look up, he's in 14th. I'm like, how did that happen?
Well, because right now we had kind of quite an interest. This is where the race semi-redeemed itself from lap 42 onwards because none of the front runners decided to really cash in on that second safety car. But a lot of the midfield did. So we suddenly had some mediums and even a real gamble on some soft tyres in there. So you got the front runners on hards mainly, and then the rest of the field behind them on mediums on a safety car restart. I was like, oh, this could get interesting. But Max nailed the restart, like dropped them all. Just as that's about to happen, news breaks of Lando's 10-second stop and go, which...
Crazy.
That just seemed... Like even Jensen Button, when they said, oh, he'd need to overtake Max and get 10 seconds ahead. And Crofty went, no, it's a stop and go. And Button went, it's a stop and go? It's like...
I mean, the FIA, to
so
your point,
harsh.
They made up the one place grid penalty for Max, and now they're like 10 seconds. And they go, that's a big penalty. Stop and go. Ho, ho, ho. Yeah, that was serious. I mean, it dropped him to last. And at this point, Joe's running in the points. Valtteri's at like 11th. And I'm thinking, Valtteri's getting points, baby. It was so exciting. And then we're back to the craziness. We had 2 good laps of racing. And then it's like, oh, Lewis has a penalty for going too fast in the pit lane. And I'm like, oh, my God. He didn't have the pit limiter on the first time through under the safety car when they're avoiding the glass. And he went too fast. Not a good weekend for Lewis, but I'm still going to get to what really bothered me in a second. And then it just...
I think it's now. I think it's now, isn't it?
It basically was. We had the gas man and Sainz kind of arguing with each other, racing against each other. It was pretty good. But then Lewis wanted to retire the car when he got this message on the time penalty, the 5-second penalty, and it was a stop go. He had to come in. I can't remember.
Stop go, and he came in and he wanted to. He said, "Just retire the car, man," and that really grinds your gears, doesn't it?
He said, "Yeah." He goes, "Why don't we just park the car?" Because the race is still going, and you're a racing driver. What do you mean, just park the car? He did this. Was it this year or last year when the car was really bad early in the season?
Yeah,
he's like, let's retire the car, save the mileage. No. I mean, if you got guys out there like Logan Sargent, who went out every week in 20th, finishing 20th, starting 20th, racing 20th, getting penalties, breaking stuff, he never said, why don't we just retire it? Why is the 7-time, should be 8-time world champion, Lewis Hamilton, the GOAT, who's going to Ferrari, who's having a real bad time at the end of his time at Mercedes, saying, why don't we just park the car? I heard that, and I'm thinking, that's the opposite of who you are. And, like, here's the thing. He's got a long body of work. It's not like this is who he is. He's just very frustrated.
Yeah,
and I'm not trying to make excuses. I really am not. But when you've watched him for so many years and cheered for him, that's not his personality. He's not a quitter. The frustration must just be boiling over. We heard at the end of Brazil, he's like, this might be my last race. Well, it wasn't. He's still got one more left now, not just the 3 after Brazil.
No, he didn't say that.
I know, we debunked it. But my point is, you can't say with one race left, with a few laps left in your second to last race, why don't we just park the car?
Yeah, I know. Then we got the Gasman doing a stellar job to keep off Sainz. K-Mag got past Albon and dropped the F-bomb as he went past him, which I thought was my highlight of radio messages from the weekend. Valtteri gets into the points by going past Albon because those softs just didn't last, so he swept past. But the joy was short-lived because you could just see the rocket ship of Lando showing what you can do if you get a stop-go penalty and come back out on tyres. You can make the most of it and put the pedal to the metal and get out there. And he was just a rocket ship. He went past Valtteri. I think he went past another driver as well in the end. Didn't he end up finishing 9th rather than 10th, Lando? Not sure.
Oh, he did, yeah. Lando was 10th. He could not catch K-Mag.
Oh, he couldn't get K-Mag. So... yeah, Valtteri's disappointed for him to finish 11th, but apparently that takes him off the bottom of the charts. He goes past Logan because his 11th finish is higher than Logan's best finish.
That's correct.
So
Valtteri's now 22nd in the championship on no points,
yes,
ahead of Logan's 23rd in the championship on no points.
Exactly. So we had Max converting what was a pole that then wasn't a pole into a win. Charles coming home to keep Ferrari in the challenge ahead of Oscar.
Did you see Charles at all during the race?
No, witness
he had
protection.
one ding-dong battle with Piastri for like one lap, and that was it, and then we never saw him again.
And we had then George, Gashman, Sainz, Alonso, Zhou, Sauber gets a point. Yay!
Driver of the day.
And driver of the day, K-Mag and Lando. So, yeah, I mean, in summary, before we maybe do our awards, 42 laps of being asleep, followed by a late safety car that rescued the race to some degree, which then with some weird FIA penalties or stewards penalties allows Ferrari to outscore McLaren, at least take the Constructors title to the last race of the season. So in a bizarre way, kind of an all right kind of race, unless you're a McLaren fan. But maybe as a McLaren fan, you're okay because Piastri kind of came in there and Lando got the fastest lap point, so you're still leading going to the last. It's just a bit of a race, I think, with a little sprinkle of excitement towards the end.
Yeah, I would agree.
Should we do the
shall we
awards?
talk about some of the awards for this race?
Yeah.
Let's start with King of the Pits. Rob, do you want to go first this week? I can't remember who went first last time.
I'll go first, and then I'll hand it over to you immediately. Zhou.
Wow.
I gotta give it to Zhou because that car's been a dog all year, and they brought one upgrade or whatever it was last week and another one this week, and they found some pace at a place where they did well last year. I think they kept saying that Valtteri's last point was at Qatar last year. So the car does seem to like this track. But actually, Zhou hasn't beaten Valtteri for a while, I don't think. And not only did he beat him, he beat two others. He's beaten K-Mag and Lando. And yes, I know Lando got the penalty, but he's ahead of K-Mag there. And he's done nothing wrong. He was fairly witness protection today as well. We didn't really see him that often. But he got his car in the right place at the right time and kept it there. And yeah, I'm giving it to Zhou.
I'm going to give it to the Gas Man. Zhou, also a deserving candidate, probably should be my King of the Pits. But Gas Man went from 11th to 5th. His teammate was nowhere and then retired for the weekend. So I'm with you. Zhou's a great, worthy candidate, driver of the day. In his second to last F1 race until he becomes potentially the reserve driver at Ferrari. We'll see. But yeah, I think Zhou, I would give it to the Gas Man if I were handing them out. And now let's talk about the pits.
You're the pits.
right, Rob, who you got as the pits?
Whoever was, do I collectively give it to the stewards this weekend or race control? Because
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but if Ferrari win the championship next week, yes, I'll be happy as a Ferrari fan, but that could have massively influenced the result today. Lando was right up there. I'm not sure a 10-second stop go. We'd have to go and wait. Maybe some of the listeners could send in any kind of precedents for this, but that just felt super severe. And then also the way they handled the mirror falling off and not deploying the safety car and ruining races for people with punctures. It just felt a bit of a mess this whole weekend, the way that they ran it. So I'm going to go first time ever with the collective race control as the pits.
Okay, well then I'm going to say for not making out of SQ3 and then forgetting the race had started when it went green from the pit lane, I'm giving it to none of them. That's why I had to go download the sound. I just knew it was coming. Sorry, Checo. Well, not really. We do not yet have Paul's report. Oh, it actually just arrived. Rob, if you could cover for me for a second, I will download it.
I will pad. I should have saved a rant up, shouldn't I, really, to go on for that. What can I do? I don't know any show tunes. No, what I would say, actually, I am going to pad here by talking about the constructors and the way that kind of played out. I think now the delta is, 31 points? Let me just bring up BBC Sport real quick to look at the standings.
I thought it was like 19.
Is it less? Is it 640 plays 619? So it
21?
is. Oh, it's 21 points. So this has really set this up now to actually have something to focus for next week. Yes, they ruined it, really. I don't think the penalty on Lando was fair. But what it has done is given us the McLaren to Ferrari head-to-head. And I think it's mathematically taken Red Bull out of the equation now. Don't think they can actually win the constructors. So I think it's a two-way fight next week. Did I pad long enough? Can you press play?
I can. And neither Rob nor I have heard this had arrived in the last 1 minute. So here's Paul's report.
Oh, God, dear Lord of anyone's saviour. Back at the hotel, I mean, we've been royally fingered. The final finger. And it's the biggest finger you could have. Today, with Valtteri, I don't really know what to say. I don't know what to say after that. Just got back to the hotel. We're exceptionally disappointed. I can't go into too much because I guess it's not fair. Look, remarkable for the team to get points. I'm not going to sit here and be absolutely traumatic on the fact that the team have got points. That's fantastic. The fact that they literally have thrown away the chance for two cars to be in the points. Yeah, this is hard. This one's hard today, actually. It's I can't go into a lot of the reasoning for why. I don't. I'm struggling. I'm really struggling. Listen, maybe in December I can analyse this one a little bit better. I don't think now is the right time for me to do that. Look, let's be positive. Can I be positive about the race? It was what I thought it would be, actually. The opening laps are a little bit dicey. We had the early little safety car, which sort of like then there was a little bit going on. And then ultimately, it was sort of not a lot was sort of happening then. It was sort of, as I suspected, it would be a bit of a DRS line. Then Albon's mirror fell off. And here starts a whole chain of events. Ironically started by Mr. Bottas, who literally caused a really good race. I'm struggling. I'm really struggling with the decision making here of how that was taken. Let's be honest. How the hell was that not yellow flag, virtual safety car to allow that to be cleared? Because ultimately, what happened with Valtteri was always going to happen. And then obviously, the repercussions of that. Lewis Hamilton, race ruined. Carlos Sainz, I think it was, race ruined. The chain reaction from that one incident, and I think, look, Oh, I don't want to go into a rant. I want to be positive. We're nearly there. We're nearly at the end. It's nearly all over. But I don't understand this decision making at times. A car goes off into the gravel trap. The driver's got out the car and is walking away from the car. And it stays under yellow flags for like 17 laps until they think, yeah, we need to move the car now. Let's go to Lando's penalty. Look, I think it's really harsh, but ultimately the rule book says that is the penalty for doing what he's done. Max was quite clever in the way he delivered the verdict on the radio, but ultimately that is the penalty for that crime. Harsh or not harsh, they have to follow a rule book. And that rule book says that's the penalty. But it's the same rule book that then would indicate that if there's an obstacle that I guess that would cause danger on a track, then it needs to... Oh, I don't know. Listen, then it caused obviously quite an interesting and good race. There's people that came in for pit stops in between when this mirror had fallen off and when it was actually they decided that it might be worth a safety car after Valtteri detonated it all over the track, causing a lot worse situation than it actually should have been. So I guess credit to VB for running over it and made it slightly fun. But, the amount of people's races that ultimately screwed... I've got one more review to go, and I want it to be positive. I was struggling with this one today. There's been too much going on. I'm genuinely a little bit emotional about today in a lot of ways. I think I'm delighted for our team, and I genuinely am. I think anyone who works in the sport will appreciate how hard it is, the hours you graft, the what you put into it for sometimes such little reward, and that is perfect description for the Sauber team. So from everyone at the team, I think, congratulations. Joe was superb today. This isn't a criticism of anyone. It's just an absolute waste. There were decisions which I struggle with, but I won't go into. And it's not fair for me to go into, while it's still quite so raw as it currently is. We'll discuss more in time. What I will say is in honesty, it was a good race. It was a good race caused by, I would say, absolute stupid, idiotic decisions by the FIA. And do you know what? The FIA, the race directors, for the final finger, it's ironic that the entire race seems to have been a mass fingering for a lot of drivers. And I can only leave it there, really. Look. One more week to go.
Existential
That's the
crisis
final finger.
for the pit lane.
I need to go and sit down, have a beer or 17, and try and digest properly that today. I had to get this sort of review in because the guys like to record early. So I'm probably not doing it at the right time or be in the right frame of mind. But for the final finger, that's it. We're sort of done from sprint races, and now we go into Abu Dhabi, the final race. Let's hope it's a good one. Let's hope that it's a really good fun weekend. The Constructors Championship is still up for grabs. I think McLaren will do it. I don't see them failing there, but there's something left to fight for. Ferrari will go for it. So, look, guys, we'll discuss this more in a few weeks' time. Now's not the time. But, yeah, look, congrats to the team. Well, I'm just going to leave it there. And I'll speak to you in a week's time.
So, Paul, thank you. Thank you for doing that quickly.
Wow.
We recognize the existential crisis you were dealing with there. We appreciate your candor and insights.
So quickly before we wrap up the race and look forward to Abu Dhabi, I'd written something in the notes after Hülkenberg pitted on lap 32. I wrote, did something happen to Bottas that we didn't see? He's showing us 40 seconds behind. He's still behind Hulkenberg, despite the fact that Hulkenberg's now made 2 stops. So he'd come in early for the puncture that had come off that had set him back. He'd come in again, and Bottas seemed to be miles behind and seemed to take... And then when he came in to stop, I don't know, are they taking an extra pit stop, do you think, or tried to be clever? Is Paul referring, do you think the team have screwed themselves out of the double points finish? Or done? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. But, oh, man, thanks for doing that, Paul, because you're obviously feeling it and appreciate the insight into to what goes on after a week like that. So
always thank you. And we don't have stats because we did this right away, so we already listed a bunch quickly on fantasy. It's provisional. We'll hit this next week more fully, and as we close the championship, I will just say this week, as of now, provisionally, I'm in first, tied with Shuey transmitted disease. Matt, we both went limitless at 293 for the tie. And
that's why you wanted to squeeze it in.
That's why I wanted to squeeze in. As of now, provisionally, these points may change. Busan, Waystor Royko, 52.09 for the season. Fakri, 51.69, and Mike, the Mike, 51.57. So those are the 3 battling it out for the last couple races atop the leaderboard. And next week is Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi, 58 laps of the day-night race, 3.2 miles long. First race at Yas Marinos was back in 2009, won by Seb. It still hits me hard that it's been around for that long. It's very famous for 2021, but we're not going to pick at that scab again. Last year, a bit like any of these kind of look-backs of what we do of like last year, it obviously was Max Domination Fest, other than when we looked back on when we previewed Singapore. So we had Max from Charles and Oscar. One of the very few times where Formula One has got this 107% rule where in qualifying you need to be within 107% of the pole positions time, and Logan didn't even set a time, so they had to go to race control to ask for permission to race, which sounds silly, but that's what they have to do. But it was granted. We had the race. It wasn't great. Not a lot actually happened. I looked at our review from last year, and it was kind of like Max disappeared out front, won by 18 seconds, became the first driver to lead 1,000 laps, and Charles and George made up the rest of the podium. But I didn't find a lot in our review of any big drama or excitement that happened. So
Abu Dhabi's famous.
I don't really remember it other than 2021.
It's famous for being relatively boring, and they've tried to take out like a little chicane on one of the corners last year. They're doing what they can to try to make the racing better, but they pay a lot of money to be the last race.
Yeah.
And it worked out for them in 2021, so they'll keep doing it for a while.
Yeah, it did. So in terms of repeat winners, Lewis leads the way at the moment with 5, Max behind him on 4, and Seb on 3. Constructors, it's Red Bull with 7, Mercedes with 6, McLaren with 1, and notable shout out to Lotus Renault, Kimi Räikkönen, in 2012.
So this track, as you say, and as I said, is a little boring. I'm not expecting a ton from it. However, do you think there's a chance that Lance or K-Mag or somebody, Colapinto, kind of takes out one of the McLarens? Like, I'm the Latifi now. And then all of a sudden we have a battle for constructors where it comes down to the last couple laps, just like 21, but constructors, not drivers. And is there going to be a Latifi moment? I think there could be. I'm willing it into some kind of chaotic... I would never do that for the Drivers' Championship. That's too personal, too important. But could we see a battle towards the end for the constructors based on a Latifi-esque moment?
I hope so. Or even if it's not a Latifi-esque, I just love to see those 4 cars involved, and maybe a Max or one of the Mercedes kind of poking their nose in, and we're all breaking out our calculators at various different points. Right. Ferrari are 1-2 or something, and then we've got a Max in the middle there with the McLarens further down, and you're like, oh, right at the moment it's a Ferrari championship, and then maybe Oscar takes Max, and it's, oh, now it's McLaren. It'd be amazing if it's that. For the win, I think the stat on here was only once in the last 14 races has anybody run from anywhere but the front row. We've had a 4th place once. Yeah. So it could be a snooze fest, but maybe we'll get some constructors drama. But we will find out in 1 week's time when we will be wrapping up our final race of the season. I can't believe we're at the end of a 24-race season already. It feels like yesterday we were doing Bahrain. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. So hopefully Paul is in a better place next week. Anything to close us out, Brian?
That's it. You nailed it. I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Paul, we love you, brother. We'll talk to you in 1 week's time. All will be fine. Everyone will see you next week, or hear you next week on The Dirty Side.